So I went to college not really knowing what I wanted to do, which I think happens to a lot of people. That's normal. The one thing that I had sort of been good at in high school, I was a decent writer. So I thought, well, maybe I could be a high school English teacher. And I had a friend who I worked with who was a few years older than me, who was also trying to go into teaching, and said to me one day, do you understand you'll have to grade papers like all the time and it will never stop, and that it's really a competitive job? I said, no, I really hadn't thought about that. So he was kind of like, well, you should rethink it. I decided I'd just start taking classes that sounded interesting, and I landed in a psychology class and I thought, oh, I kind of like this. So I took another one. Oh, I like this. And I took another one, and that's sort of how I found my path, was just finding a class that I really enjoyed and then figuring out what can I do with this. I'm Sara Reyburn. Usually I ask students to call me Ms. Reyburn, or Sarah is okay if they feel comfortable. I have been teaching at BMCC for 20 years. So my first real job was being a cashier at the local grocery store when I was a senior in high school. I applied for that job at the beginning of my senior year, and I did so because I had friends who were also working there, and they said, oh, why don't you come to work here? So I did, and it was actually a really good job to have in high school. The boss was very understanding about, keeping my hours the way they needed to be, and through college, through when I started college, they really worked with me, so I appreciated that. For me, I think the challenge I had first and foremost was going to school. So kind of the idea of starting college was very overwhelming. I decided that the one class through the community college would work better for me starting out before I jumped into, say, a full load of classes at a university. So I actually struggled more, I think, with getting started in college. But I will say that when I went to the university and became a full-time student, the struggle became more about affording it. I happened to be married, and so I was on my own, my husband and I, and we were having to support ourselves and support me going to school on a part-time job for me, and he did have a full-time job, but not being paid high wages. So I had to take out loans, and that was kind of difficult. People don't really want to jump into debt while you're in college, but that was the only way I was going to be able to afford to go. And also, one thing that, and we're working on this now, but back then, books were very expensive, and I took out my first credit card to pay for textbooks. That's the only reason I actually got a credit card, was I had no other way to pay for textbooks. So it was kind of knowing that you're going into debt for this education, and knowing that you probably, hopefully, will stick with it so that you can pay off that debt that you're accumulating. I think another bit of a challenge to stay in school, I did commute to school. I lived 30 miles from the university, and I drove 5 days a week, every day to school. No matter the weather, no matter how I felt, no matter what, I had to get up and go, and sometimes that was to go to a morning class and stay for a night class, and I'd get home 10 o'clock at night or 10:30 at night. So that could be sometimes challenging. One thing that I hope students experience at BMCC is I hope they find a class that really interests them, that they have the opportunity to find a class that they get excited about. And I think the other thing that I really hope for every student is that they feel supported while they're here at BMCC, that they feel like they can talk to their teachers or other staff members and get their questions answered. So one top expectation for BMCC students is that they want to be here, that they have the motivation that they need to go to their classes and do what they need to do. it kind of all ties together, that then the expectation is that they will do the work that's required for their classes, and just stick with it. So one thing that I wish I would have done differently, I wish I would have become more familiar with the resources that were available to me on campus. I didn't really explore that to know, was there tutoring available? Was there somewhere I could go for health if I had some kind of a health issue or something along that line? And I think the other thing that I sort of wish I would have done differently, I didn't participate in a lot of student life activities. There were athletic events, there were guest speakers, theater performances, music performances, and I never went to those. I went to my classes and I went home instead of participating in some activities. Remember to stay motivated, that you can do it even when those kind of bumps come along the road, that you'll make it. Maybe you'll have to take a break for a bit, but education is always here and you can always come back to it. Life sometimes throws its curves, and it's the one thing that you can take a break from it, but it's always going to be there if you want to come back.